Good afternoon. We have a beautiful storm rolling in, so I found us a little spot over here so I can continue. The sporting group. Oh, yeah, I've got this book. Sorry, friends. Here's what we're reading. Wiley Dog is in the back. The sporting group. The dogs we call sporting are the descendants of dogs bred to work with human hunters to locate, flush out, or retrieve game, specifically birds. Pointers and setters are the dogs that locate and point to game. If you're going to come up here, I'm going to roll your window up. Sneaky dog. All right. Pointers and setters are the dogs that locate and point to game. Spaniels are the groups that flush out game, and retrievers are the group that brings back the game once it's been shot. Remember, it's called sporting because they are not killing. Over time, humans have adapted these wolf-descended, finely tuned, predatory instincts and behaviors and stopped them short of the actual kill. It becomes a sport to the animal. The only one who's a full-fledged predator in this process is the human. I don't necessarily agree with the many guides to dog breeds out there that claim all dogs of a certain breed have a given, preordained energy level. In the same way that there can be high and low energy kids born into the same family, there can be a whole range of different energy levels in every breed and even in every litter. Just because a dog has a blue ribbon lineage doesn't necessarily mean that dog is going to become the poster pup for all of that breed's ideal characteristics. If you breed together two prize-winning, sporting setters, you might get a litter of two energetic, potential prize-winning pups, one medium energy pup that gets tired or bored after an hour on a hunt, and one mellow, laid-back dog who only wants to laze around the house and lie by the fire. I believe that. Just as in humans, energy level is something you are born with. As I discussed in Chapter 1, energy is a part of identity and what we call personality. No energy level is better or worse than another, though certain energy levels are better fits for certain jobs. You need a lower energy human to be happy sitting at a computer all day. And of course, you need a higher energy human to be an aerobics teacher. Aerobics was a form of exercise in the 1900s. The same thing applies to dogs. However, people discovered thousands of years ago that higher energy dogs are necessary to be successful sporting dogs, so they began selecting as best they could to ensure that energy level in as many offspring as possible. A good sporting animal needs stamina. Hunting is a sport that can take hours and hours at a time of intense activity, combined with focused waiting, requiring lots of patience and concentration. You have to move forward, and you have to make sure you're going on the right trail and following the right scent. That's why it's safe to say that sporting breeds are usually higher energy dogs overall. The more purely they're bred, the more intense those breed-specific characteristics will tend to be. And here's the story. Gracie and Marley, two faces of a breed. Both Gracie and Marley are Labrador retrievers. They're from the sporting group, bred to find, track, and retrieve game. However similar they may look on the outside, though they are great examples of the range of different temperaments that can be found in the same breed. Though Marley's breeders claimed he was a purebred, he was definitely the offspring of city dog stock, and he was raised in a city setting without all the environmental cues to trigger his buried instincts. In fact, it seemed that Marley had only a few leftover instincts from his sporting past, but he had all the pent-up energy that went along with them. John Grogan writes of how happy Marley was to go on long, long walks along the Intercoastal Waterway in Florida, walks that could only begin to challenge his very high energy level. Playing with him in the backyard, the Grogans were both entertained and frustrated by Marley's inability to understand the concept of retrieving. That is, Marley didn't understand that retrieving doesn't just mean getting and keeping the ball. It means bringing it back as well. Marley's energy and instincts were bouncing all over the place, and they usually found their outlet in destruction. When the Grogans moved to their rural Pennsylvania retreat during Marley's later years, they saw him relax into his new environment that, on a very primal level, must have felt more familiar to him. Gracie, on the other hand, was bred from hunting stock that had lived and thrived in the countryside for generations. She was a top-of-the-line dog who hit the jackpot when it came to hunting genes and energy level. And when you're talking about a dog of that caliber, you are going to see from an early age all the greatness of the generations of her breed. From a very early age, you'll see such a pup stalking a feather duster in the house, seeking out bird feathers in the yard, freezing and getting into stalking pose as they see birds and small animals wander by. It's very clear to them what the purpose of their life is going to be. If a dog like Gracie were living in the city with the same lax structure she was now experiencing, she would most likely become neurotic, developing obsessive, possessive, or destructive tendencies. But living in her country paradise, she had plenty of natural outlets for her frustrations. And as the Grogans told me, when she got that bloodlust look in her eyes, it was as if they didn't exist. She'd become a completely different dog, with one master only, her instinct. From an early age, the owners of such dogs have to learn to channel that energy and redirect such behavior if they don't want the dog to take over on her own. The Grogans told me that Gracie was quiet and controlled inside the house, which makes total sense. Gracie's energy wasn't wasted in bouncing off the walls. Gracie's energy wasn't wasted in bouncing off the walls as Marley's had been. She was carefully conserving it to use for the endurance that great hunting dogs need to track and stalk their prey. Her genes were telling her, "Don't squander your resources in here. Save them up. There are chickens outside in the yard just waiting for you to stalk them." She wasn't going to sweat the small stuff by eating couches and knocking over tables like Marley did, because she had a clearer purpose for the skills born into her. That purpose lay in the great outdoors and all its temptations. Both Gracie and Marley were frustrated dogs at heart. Though neither of them lacked for love from their family, both suffered from a lack of leadership, rules, boundaries, and limitations. and not enough physical and psychological challenges. But in Gracie's case, her purebred genes were determining a very specific outlet for her frustration. The animal in her was not being fulfilled because she wasn't getting enough physical activity to simulate the process of having to work for food and water. The dog in her wasn't being fulfilled because she lacked rules, boundaries, and limitations. But it was the breed in her that was telling her, this is the activity that we practice in order to drain our excess energy. That's why I told the Grogans that we had to consider breed first in order to lower the intensity of her needs. And the way we'd lower the intensity and channel that excess energy is by giving her guidance in exactly what she was already doing, but from a sporting point of view, not a killing point of view. It was obvious to me that we needed to gain control over that side of her so we could decrease the frustration in the other areas as well. All right. Fulfilling sporting dogs, the next section. If you have a sporting breed dog with a genetic drive as strong as Gracie's, you cannot be a true pack leader unless you have control over the activities that spring from that drive. When the light bulb of that idea went on for John Grogan, he came up with a brilliant metaphor for it that I'm going to borrow here. What if two parents who are both very practical, math, science types have a child who is born with both the gift and the drive to be highly